Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. Today we're visiting the Greenhouse Learning Center on OSU's campus to look at some of the ways the soil has been remediated. We head down to an old community garden with a new name. Then we visit with a horticulture graduate student to learn about her research on a new production system. And finally, it's been another amazing season that must come to an end, but I'll give you a sneak peek of what's to come in 2025. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Oklahoma Gardening is also a proud partner with Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Shape Your Future provides resources for Oklahomans to make the healthy choice the easy choice. I love sharing with you guys the cool things that plants can do. We're back here at the student farm. I want to share with you a tropical plant that you might find in some Oklahoma landscapes. It's important to know which plants we are dealing with so that we can continue to maintain them successfully for years to come. Today we are out in front of the Greenhouse Learning Center, and again joining me is Dr. Moss. And one of the things that, as much as we care about horticulture and landscape and the soil, there are instances where we get handed construction soil, such as this 5 years ago.
That's right.
So let's talk about some of the remedies that we've done out here in front of the GLC to help amend the soil and improve it from that construction site.
Yeah, we're back on campus at our beautiful Greenhouse Learning Center for our department. And we have this outdoor classroom space too. So we want our students to have like the hands-on experience, do all the great things in the greenhouse, but also out here. But what did this used to be, Casey?
It was a parking lot.
This was a parking lot.
So it was literally heavily compacted,
yes.
Not to mention the construction to build stuff.
All the things.
Which is important. I mean, you got to have a compacted foundation area.
Absolutely, yes.
So, but now it's been a learning process for students,
yes.
How to grow in construction soil.
Exactly. Yeah, so we can still dig down, we can find plenty of rocks, plenty of concrete, plenty of rebar, all the things.
Break a few shovels.
Buried treasures are here. And so here we are 5 years later, and we're just now kind of getting a handle on building up soil health.
Yes.
Because it takes time, right?
It does, absolutely. And there's a lot that's involved in soil health.
There really is. And so, you know, we always talk about where do we start? We start with a soil test. So of course we've done that, and you know, as might be expected, there are some issues here with you know, pH and nutrients and organic matter. So what we've tried to do is resolve all that through time. And you have different areas out here, different beds, and so not every bed is the same. They all have a little bit different issues, a little bit different problems, maybe different slope, maybe different pH level, maybe different organic matter. So we've just tried to build them up kind of like a prescription.
Yes, absolutely.
For each one.
And one of the sort of the aspirin for the garden is compost, right?
Yeah, you got to have compost. So topsoil and compost was huge. And so really kind of the strategy has been, okay, we knew we couldn't do a lot about the hard subsoil that's here and the concrete and the buried treasures that are here. And so why don't we just go up?
Okay.
So maybe build these beds up a little bit and get a little, you know, kind of bring in our own root zone and build that up in that top 6, 8, 12 inches. And at the same time kind of build these beds up so that our plants can do well. So really that's been the strategy.
And I've noticed you've done that in a couple of different ways. Not only do we have traditional raised beds.
We do.
But you also have a succulent garden back here with rocks, and then also your native garden. Tell me about some of those.
Exactly right. So the raised beds is really for classes for the vegetable production. So those are, you know, definitely artificial, built above the ground, right? And then over here next to the greenhouse, we have this area where it's a little windy because we have exhaust fans. So we put some succulents there. But yeah, we kind of step that up to give some beauty to it, some aesthetics with the rocks. And then put those succulents in there that can do well in that territory. We're not worried about them drying out so much there. And so yeah, they're doing quite well. But all of that that rooting zone is really kind of artificial. It's kind of, we built that up for the plants. And then same here in our native area.
And let me go back to this. Being succulents, there's a little more aggregate in there for better drainage.
Exactly right.
But also it's a microclimate because you got a lot of wind coming from those greenhouse fans.
Yeah.
And so having the succulents that maybe are used to a dry, arid environment, they work well there.
It works well there. Right plant, right place is so important,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. So let's talk about the native garden then.
Again, right plant, right place. And so, hey, using some of these native, like these native grasses, like switchgrass, hey, what does it do for you?
It makes roots.
It makes roots.
And a lot of biomass on top.
So you can help, break up that hard pan soil with those roots and get a little aeration to it, right?
Exactly.
Naturally, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's all important.
So even though this landscape, and I think that's one of the things is we don't realize, like, you know what, if we're tired of switchgrass, we can take that out. But in the meantime, it has really developed our root system and our soil.
Yeah, we're 5 years down the road, and so let these things do their thing. And then, if you want to change them out in the future, as that soil health builds up and as the quality builds up for you, it gives you more options for what plants you might put out here. So let them do their thing. We're 5 years down the road. And it's going to take, it's a marathon, right? Yeah. So we've got work to do still, and we still have some areas that have, relatively high pH, and so we're still amending soils for that. But we'll get there.
And I know one of the things we always talk about is not only building up the soil, but also planting plants higher.
Yes.
Because as they settle, they can sink down, which creates sort of a drainage problem for those plants. So we've got them planted higher here.
So some of these are planted a little high. You'll see on some of the trees and shrubs over here in the native bed. Yeah, planted a little high, but it really helps the plant to do well.
Yeah, and being in a public space, obviously, we have to take care of these sidewalks.
We do,
and I know OSU is sensitive to putting out ice melt and how much they're doing and when they're doing it, but I've noticed because of the raised beds, you're not going to have runoff of whatever contaminants on the sidewalk going into those beds.
That's right, yeah. So it keeps everything kind of contained, and then let the drainage do its thing and take it where it needs to go. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, Dr. Moss, thank you so much for sharing some of the remedies that y'all used here at the GLC.
Thank you.
Today we are in Oklahoma City at a place that might look familiar to some of you. We are at what is the former Chesapeake Employee Community Garden that has now been resurrected by the Lynn Institute. And joining me today is Jordan Davis, who is the Director of Community Gardens for the Lynn Institute. Jordan, thank you so much for having us here. And I got to tell you, last time I drove by, it was full of weeds. Tell me a little bit about the Lynn Institute and how they got involved in this.
Yeah, so Lynn Institute is leasing this area from Chesapeake, formerly Chesapeake, which is now Expand Energy. So we have a 5-year lease, and Expand is kind of helping us keep up with some of the stuff around here, but we are helping turn the beds into something that we can use for food distribution around the city. So when I got here, I was hired about 16 months ago to kind of oversee the operation and have the vision for the area. And so when we came in, it had kind of been abandoned because of COVID. You know, people hadn't been out here much. There were weeds 6, 8 feet tall, sunflowers, things I just volunteered from when they were growing things previously. So we had to come through initially and knock it all down, kind of clear the land, you know, get it ready for something that we could do. And then we started planting.
And you found some good bones under here,
yes,
right? I mean, that
good,
was the thing about this garden is it was really built to last. And so you've got these nice concrete raised beds that you have transformed, basically. So tell me a little bit about the overall vision of this place.
Yeah, so we have kind of a few different things that are happening in here. You know, Lynn Institute started out as a healthcare research with Integris, and now they do more boots on the ground kind of stuff. So for the last few years, we've been doing a lot of education classes, cooking classes, nutrition classes, dietitian classes, kind of helping get resources to areas where it's needed. And then so this, when COVID happened and people started needing more food, Lynn stepped in and started doing food distribution where we were buying it from suppliers wholesale. And when this became available, you know, Pam Patty was a dietitian and master gardener who kind of saw the space and went knocking on doors, and she connected the Lynn Institute here.
Okay.
And
so she was a gardener that
yes.
saw an opportunity for Lynn Institute.
Yeah, and something that was just sitting here that had a lot of opportunity.
As a dietitian in the community, that's always my role, is to try to educate people. So to say, how do you garden, as well as why do you garden, and if you have healthy food, can that translate into people being healthier in the community? And when it's proximity, we don't have to travel, we don't have to let the food have any challenges. You come out, you grow it, you harvest it, you eat it within proximity, and then you have this opportunity that most times we don't get. We go to a grocery store, right? We don't know it came from California, it came from Florida. Right in our own backyard here, we can have this gorgeous food that's really, and I think Caleb and Jordan have shown the productivity is here. The amount of food that can be grown out of here is fantastic.
There's a couple quadrants here that we're using for production. So we're doing more urban farm style production. That way we can feed as many people as possible. And then the other area is more of like a hands-on place that people can come volunteer. That way they can learn, and we try to just loop everything in, like education, into everything that we do.
And is anybody able to come out here and volunteer, or are you working with specific groups?
Yeah, right now we have Tuesdays and Thursday mornings that are available for people to come volunteer. And then we do usually a Saturday every month. We're not going to do it in the fall, but in the spring we'll pick back up.
And so what's the best way for people to find out information if they wanted to get involved in this?
I'd say just go to our website, lynninstitute.org,
Okay.
and on there there'll be a garden page, and they can reach out to us via email. We can kind of loop them in that way, have them out for a tour if they want to see the place, and then figure out how to get them involved.
And I think what we're trying to do here is to bring in partner agencies that we work with and to see how can they utilize the beds for some of the programming that they're doing. So the Indian Health Clinic, we're getting ready to meet with them. They've already come out a couple of times, and we'd love to have a couple of the beds for them to do their programming. They do a turtle camp in the summer. How can we allow people to use, like you said, it's already here, the infrastructure is already set. How can other people come in and benefit from it?
So we have a few different places we distribute to around the city, and so we'll harvest it here. We usually do once or twice a week. We've kind of built out the infrastructure, so even though this came with a bunch of sheds, we still had to build out wash stations and things like that, but that way we can kind of process everything on site and then get it to where they need to go, and it stays fresh. You know, it doesn't sit around for a few days on a truck or anything like that.
All right. Do you need volunteers also for all of that processing? And
That
everything?
we're hoping to turn into more of like an apprenticeship.
Okay.
So if people want to learn how to do more urban farming, we'd love to have people kind of do more of an extensive course, but that's in the works.
So I know part of uncovering this garden, you found this beautiful courtyard that was pre-existing as well.
Yeah, when they originally built this area, they put in these huge stone columns and a pergola. It's kind of a nice gathering place for people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of that stuff is kind of, you know, not
Needs
been around
maintenance,
anymore.
right?
Yeah. Yes, and so what we're going to do is revitalize the courtyard area. We're going to put the pergola back up that kind of came down, as well as adding a few features like a water fountain and a fire pit as well.
Okay.
And then we'll surround the courtyard area with native flowers, native fruit trees, something that kind of ties the whole garden together. And then we've also got espalier trees that are kind of walkways, and the walkways that we're kind of bringing back to life, you know, revitalizing that. And so long term, we'll just have it as a beautiful place that people can come and do events. We'll continue to do our education classes in those areas, as well as have a place that people can just come and enjoy the beauty of, you know, creation and what we're doing here.
My heart is to have food demonstrations out here, to have cooking demonstrations out here, to have kids out here, because that's the generation that's going to pull it forward. Kids are very receptive to things. I think we have to really work on the parents. They're the ones, oh, we don't eat that. But the kids are like, yeah, that was good, Mom. So if we can try to have the family dynamic that says, hey, kids, parents, community building, and so everybody gets a chance to say, hey, we want to be a part of what this is going forward.
Well, you definitely have a big project ahead of you, and this is just your first season that you've transformed this place, so we look forward to following up with you again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today we're at one of the backfields here at the OSU Student Farm, and joining me is Shelby Mendoza, who is a PhD student with the Horticulture and Landscape Architecture Department. And Shelby, let's talk a little bit. This is part of your project.
Yeah.
What is it that you're doing here?
So originally this acre was covered in trees and concrete. So in January we started clearing out the field in order to establish a certified naturally grown plot. So it's an acre plot, and we hope to get it certified through the CNG program in the next year.
Okay, so yes, it was previously the swine farm. We had wash racks and things like that, so
Yeah.
a lot of debris. But let's talk a little bit about what CNG is first of all.
So it is an alternative certification for growers, usually small growers, under 5 acres, that want to have some kind of certification, but for whatever reason, USDA's National Organic Program is kind of out of reach for them. So it's a cheaper program. Right now, I think the annual fees are $250 a year. The paperwork requirement is less than would be with the USDA program, and then it's actually a peer-reviewed system, so you don't have a government employee coming out to inspect your field. You have growers that are in your area that know the challenges you're dealing with.
Okay, and so national program, right, or international?
U.S. and Canada.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So how many farms are currently involved in this?
There's 600 in the U.S. and in Canada.
Okay, but fairly new to Oklahoma, which is part
Right.
of why you're doing this, to see how well it does here in Oklahoma,
Correct.
right?
So we currently have 3 that are certified in Oklahoma.
Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the differences between conventional production versus CNG production. And obviously, I have recognized this soil is so important. So really the last year you've been focused on getting that soil prepped to plant a crop, right?
Right.
What did it look like when you started?
So we did an initial soil test in March this year, and our average nitrogen across the field was only 5 pounds per acre. It's very low, but our potassium and phosphorus were really high. We did do an initial spreading of cow manure just to kind of give it enough nitrogen for our cover crops this summer to actually grow. So then we did 15 loads of cow manure across the field, and then came back in June to plant our summer cover crop of sorghum Sudan grass and sun hemp.
Okay, and we still see some remnants of that.
Correct.
But you did terminate that. How did you go about terminating that?
So I got to drive the tractor and flail mow, and parts of the field were actually over 7 foot tall. Okay. So the plants really did grow quickly and tall over 65 days, and then came through with the flail mower on the tractor and just cut it down to as close to the ground as we could get without disturbing the soil.
Okay, and you got a little regrowth from that, but that's not
Right.
a big deal because our cooler temperatures are going to
It'll
finish
kill
those
it
off.
soon. Yep.
Right, but basically a lot of biomass that you have now allowed to integrate down into that soil profile, right?
Right.
And so let's talk about why maybe you chose sun hemp specifically, and then also let's then talk about cool season cover crops.
Okay, so sun hemp is a legume, so we did inoculate it with, it's the peanut and cowpea inoculant. Sun hemp is also listed on that, and it actually fixed 150 pounds of nitrogen for our acre.
Wow.
So we're up to over 200 pounds per acre now, where we started with 5 earlier this year.
And you did test after the manure too, so
We did.
you know that is a result of,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
So it's still, the manure I think knocked us up to 62 pounds per acre, and now we're sitting at about 211 pounds per acre.
Wow, okay.
But so sun hemp is a legume, and it is a tropical legume at that. So it's able to take our heat in the summer and kind of withstand some drought conditions, but then also sun hemp grows tall fast.
Okay.
So one of the problems we were going to have on this specific site is Johnson grass. So we wanted to kind of compete. We wanted our cover crops to compete with that Johnson grass, and it really did a good job of that. That hasn't been the weed that we've seen popping back up. We've seen others, but both the sorghum Sudan grass and the sun hemp were 6 to 7 feet tall.
Okay. So one of the things is with CNG is you can't use herbicides and things like that to come in and get rid of the Bermuda grass and the Johnson grass. So you're looking at trying to shade it out or create a competition for it, basically.
Right. So shading out was the big goal there, and then you can use products with CNG, but they have to be OMRI listed.
Okay.
And there's just not a lot of great options for herbicides that actually take care of Johnson grass or Bermuda grass on the list.
So you're probably still seeing a little Bermuda grass and maybe some Johnson grass that'll come back, but hopefully over time you're going to see less and less of that.
Right.
So let's talk. You've got your winter cover already planted.
Yes.
So what are we doing this winter?
We've got crimson clover, which was inoculated again to try to get that extra nitrogen boost, and then we've got hardy winter wheat. Those are our two. So we wanted to mix a grass and a legume. Okay.
Getting the biomass and then also that nitrogen fixing.
Correct.
So will you again terminate this in the springtime?
We will. Our goal right now, it's looking like planting our actual crop in the beginning of March. So we'll probably terminate it in February.
Okay. All right.
And get beds prepped.
So one of the things I think a lot of times people think, if we're not using a synthetic fertilizer for nitrogen, which is kind of the most prominent need of a plant, why not just keep reapplying manure, right? So, why are you shifting now to cover crops, basically?
Yeah, so our potassium and phosphorus were already high, and when you introduce manure, you're introducing those as well, and so we did see an uptake in that after applying our cow manure, which isn't, really what we wanted, but we needed nitrogen, so that was the easiest way to get it. Ultimately, continuous manure applications just aren't sustainable because it's going to increase other nutrient levels that we don't need.
Right.
And it's not actually available for our plants either, and it can lead to nutrient runoff eventually too.
Okay. So it might be that, after a period of time, you do use some more manure at some point, but you're going to be watching those phosphorus potassium levels a little bit, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Shelby, thank you so much for sharing this with us, and we look forward to following up next year.
Thanks for coming.
We've had another incredible season here on Oklahoma Gardening, traveling the state, and it's always such a pleasure to visit with each of you. We also want to thank you for continuing to open your backyards for us to showcase, as well as inviting us into your living room each week. This season, we explored how gardening can create healthy lifestyles for people of all ages and backgrounds with Shape Your Future. We took our basil crop and turned it into a product with the help of OSU's Robert M. Kerr Food and Agriculture Product Center. We've sown numerous seeds, harvested various crops, and now with our winter cover crops and garlic planted, it's time to let the garden slow down a bit. For the remainder of the year, we'll be revisiting some of our favorite segments and re-airing those on our Best of Oklahoma Gardening episodes. While the garden may be slowing down a little bit, just know the OKG team is still continuously working. And in fact, for the past several months, we have been busy planning our 2025 season. And that's because next year, 2025, marks Oklahoma Gardening's 50th anniversary. Next year, we will not only be taking a look back at the last 50 years, but also be looking at the future. We've begun the process of interviewing many of the previous hosts, videographers, and garden managers about their experience and how the show, the Botanic Garden, and technology has changed since 1975. It's taken a lot of dedicated people and viewers to get us to this milestone, and we look forward to sharing it with you next season.
There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead. Join us next week as we begin the best of Oklahoma gardening as we focus on trees.
So, it's always the end is the worst here. Now, as we continue through this, can I just stand here and talk?
To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriters, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, and Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.